Israel has just killed one of the most senior figures in the Iranian regime, and they've done so inside Tehran. And that individual is Ali Larijani, the Secretary of Iran's National Security Council. He was another individual, incidentally, who sprouted up from the Iraq-Iran war, and he climbed the ranks ultimately to become the de facto regime leader after Khamenei was eliminated. That's Khamenei the Elder. He's also the former chief nuclear negotiator, and he is the individual who reached that awful agreement with the former president of the United States, Barack Obama, known as the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or more colloquially as the Iran deal, which President Donald Trump, during his first term, described as the worst deal in history. Then thereafter, immediately removing the United States from that deal and really setting into motion the chain of events that is culminating around us today. You should also know that Larijani led the Iranian war planning and the doctrine of the fighting of this war since the outset of the current conflict. And most importantly, he oversaw and commanded the killing of the demonstrators inside Iran who were rising up seeking their freedom but were put down brutally by the regime. Estimates stating that tens of thousands of such protesters were killed at the hands of this individual. Now, he was supposed to continue to run things inside Iran beyond the elimination of Ali Khamenei. Of course, the dispatch of him brings that plan to an abrupt end. And it's very significant because it shows that Israel, which led the assassination of this individual, not the United States of America, has exquisite intelligence on the ground still inside Iran. And the remnants of the Iranian leadership, which I can assure you, despite the headlines, are discombobulated by the highly effective wave of strikes against them and their capabilities, will be looking at one another, wondering who is the source of intelligence from which the Israeli Defense Forces is benefiting so richly at this time. And in addition to this individual, the head of the Basij force for the past 6 years, Soleimani, along with his deputy and several other senior officials within the Basij force, has also been taken out in northern Tehran. Now, the specific circumstances of how that came about are yet to be declared. There are all sorts of discussions, including that he was hit inside a moving vehicle. But again, this underlines the fact that Israel knows exactly who is where and exactly when to pull the trigger to bring about an end to their existence on the face of this earth. And Defense Minister Katz in Israel made a very strong statement. He said that Larijani and Soleimani had, quote, joined the head of the annihilation program. Khamenei and all the eliminated members of the axis of evil are in the depths of hell. Now, there are some people who might not like the tone of Defense Minister Katz. I happen to like it. I think that he seems to be fluent in the language of the Middle East, and I think that his statements of bombast match those of the Iranians. The difference between Minister Katz and the Iranian leadership is that Minister Katz seems able very, very skillfully to put results behind his bluster, whereas the Iranians are being proven to be woefully ill-equipped to bring about the realization of any of their threats against us. So big news out of Iran today. With regard to Iran's nuclear weapons pursuit, it's rumored that there are approximately 450 kilograms of enriched uranium that remain inside Iran. That's after the 12-day war, which was launched in no small part to bring about a permanent end to Iran's nuclear pursuit. In terms of what specifically is being threatened here, the 450 kilos is said to have been enriched up to 60%. And the only reason for the uranium to be enriched to that level is in order to produce a nuclear weapon. And that amount, that 450 kilos, is estimated to be sufficient for 11 nuclear weapons. Incidentally, that's the same number that the Iranian negotiators sat down and boasted about when they joined Special Envoy Steve Witkoff for negotiations to avoid what is currently taking place over the skies of Iran. So it's a very serious threat if that uranium remains inside Iran, as is thought to be the case. Now, it's not thought to be in one particular location. It's said to be dispersed throughout several locations within Iran. And it leaves the Iranians, if they take it back in hand, if they recover this material, within 1 to 2 weeks of developing a bomb in accordance with the best estimates from the West. Now, it clearly cannot be left in the hands of this regime. And so there's a lot of talk and a lot of analysis about what would be required in order to extract this uranium from wherever it's currently stored. I believe that in the event that we see the extraction of this uranium, it will be after something that is exceptionally daring, exceptionally sophisticated, and goes far beyond what anybody not involved in the military planning of such an operation can possibly fathom or imagine. It will involve the very best of American and Israeli capabilities, but it is absolutely essential, in my opinion, that the uranium is removed from Iran. So while we're decapitating the leadership in Tehran, and while we are really causing complete confusion and disarray within the command and control structure in Iran, they still retain the know-how of how to build a nuclear weapon. And therefore, we have to make sure that that know-how is never married up with the material needed to manufacture these weapons of mass death. So in terms of the timeline of when the war can end, there is a lot of chit-chat in the international media about the urgent need to bring this conflict to a close. I think all of that is complete nonsense, and I think that everybody needs to take a far more mature view of what is going on with regard to the current war. And when you have a threat to the world order, as Iran has already proved itself to be by way of its bombing and attacking of its neighbors in the Gulf, and when you have a regime that is so obviously hell-bent on wiping out the one and only Jewish state, you do not tackle that regime with a hard stop clock that is based on the opinion of the international media, of the commentariat in the international press, or, dare I say it, on the price of the pump in the United States of America, which is a short-lived economic glitch, something that will be remedied once this conflict comes to a close. It will come to a close, in my estimations, and I hope that this will be the case, once the goals of this operation are reached. Now, much depends upon whether or not the Iranian people will take to the streets and rise up and take over this regime and begin to build Iran in a different, better, preferred image. I don't know whether the Iranian people are up to doing that. But regardless of whether or not they rise to that challenge, America and Israel is doing so. We are, without any question, massively downgrading the ballistic missile capabilities of this regime. We are, without any question, eliminating their leadership, and we are in the process, in southern Lebanon in particular, of taking the fight against one of their major proxies, namely Hezbollah. All of that is going on alongside the Americans, who are decimating the Iranian Navy, and in time, in the fullness of time, will find a way to reopen the Straits of Hormuz. Now, President Trump has asked for the assistance of various NATO allies in that specific effort. He's been rebuffed by some, including the United Kingdom. But one of the reasons that he's asked for that assistance is simply that the minesweepers that are needed in order to clear safe passage within the Straits, the American minesweepers are somewhat further away geographically than some of America's NATO allies with the same capabilities. So in time, the Straits will be opened. I believe that the Americans will find a way of doing so, and I believe that we'll see the price of oil calm down. But regardless of that, everybody should be very clear-eyed about the danger that awaits world order and global stability if this regime is allowed to continue unchecked with its murderous pursuit of nuclear weapons, ballistic missile capabilities, and the continued spread of its terror proxies, which incidentally have sought to assassinate the President of the United States in the United States, which have sought to assassinate Israeli ambassadors in the United States of America, and which are arrayed throughout Europe, Central and South America already. It's time to take the fight to these people, and everybody should have a little bit longer a fuse when it comes to assessing when the end of this war should be. I don't know when the conflict will come to a close, but it can't come to a close without the complete realization of the various war aims that have been clearly delineated by the American president and by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. What we're seeing at this time is the IDF calling out tens of thousands of reservists and switching from a defensive posture in southern Lebanon into an offensive posture to drive Hezbollah out of southern Lebanon to beyond the Litani River. And also our Air Force is taking the fight to Hezbollah strongholds in Dakhia, which is inside Beirut. So this is a rapid intensification of the fighting, but I'm sorry to say it is the result of the fact that Hezbollah has shown itself able to continue to launch rockets upon Israel at a very high volume indeed. Granted, with limited results, although there have been some dreadful outcomes. But just a few days ago, they launched 150 munitions upon our citizens in northern Israel, who on this occasion have not been evacuated from their homes by the Israeli government, contrary to what happened at the beginning of the war in October 2023. So I think it's good that we're on the march. I know that the IDF will go forward, and make no mistake about it, we will smash Hezbollah in any open, direct conflict. There's no question about that whatsoever. But keep in mind 2 points. Number one, Hezbollah seems to be in the throes of a completely suicidal mission. This is a fight that I believe they know they cannot win, and they are fighting nonetheless. And the second thing is, the neighbors in the region are watching it very closely indeed. As an example, Syria has commanded what I would describe as its foreign legion of fighters to start clearing the mines that lead from Syria into Lebanon so that they can move into Lebanon and take the fight to Hezbollah in the event that they need to do so. So it's not just Israel that sees Hezbollah as needing to be tackled directly. It's also Syria, which just goes to show you how complicated and complex the interests of the Middle East are when you look at them country by country.